みんなこんなやつの言うこと聞くことはねえぞ。こいつは海兵なんだ。
何か問題でも？
いいんだ。そうだ、いいんだ。普通海兵が味方で、俺たちの方が悪い。
It's not up for debate if One Piece is good or not. It's not good. It's right. But can we classify the characters in One Piece as good or evil? I'm talking about an ethical view. Does Oda take an absolute or a relativist approach to morality in the world that he built? Of course, the Straw Hats seem to be the good guys in the narrative arc. We see their perspective and we laugh along with Luffy's antics, but the Straw Hats are a small, albeit influential, group in the One Piece world. One Piece is a story that's notorious for not looking at the world as if it's black and white. Justice and morality in this world are seen in shades of gray, and the characters on both ends of the good to evil spectrum often blur the lines as we learn more about them. So let's dive into the grand line and see, do good and evil really exist in One Piece?
海賊が悪、海軍が正義、そんなものはいくらでも塗り替えられてきた。平和を知らねえガキどもと
Like the world of One Piece, in our world, morality often seems like it's not black and white. There are so many different lenses through which we can look at moral actions. In this video, I want to see if One Piece takes an absolutist or a relativist stance on morality. But first, let's understand these ethical views. A moral absolutist will look at the world and see universal moral standards that apply to all people all the time. Philosopher Immanuel Kant is a famous supporter of this view. He believed in objective moral law, which he referred to as categorical imperatives. And this dictated that actions were either inherently right or wrong regardless of the situation. Like saying that killing someone or lying is wrong regardless of the context. And on the other hand, a moral relativist will hold that morality is context dependent, varying across cultures and societies, each one being as valid as the last. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche argued that morals aren't universal, but are actually shaped by the cultural and historical context. According to relativism, what's considered right in one culture may be deemed as wrong in another, and that each of those stances are valid depending on the context. And already from those definitions, I'm sure you can think of different characters or situations in One Piece that fit each of these worldviews. But I want to take a step back and look at which of these philosophies Oda seemed to support more when he built his world. Immanuel Kant may have looked like a celestial dragon, but he was one of the central thinkers of the Enlightenment. Kant wanted to find moral truth in rationality as opposed to divine authority. He believed that, unlike your religion or your culture, humans can't opt out of rationality. He thought that we owed it to ourselves to act as rationally as we can. In order to do this, Kant came up with duties that he labeled categorical imperatives. Basically, moral obligations that are binding in all situations, regardless of the context, and that aren't dependent on a person's inclination or their purpose. Moral absolutism is a philosophy that's essentially grounded in that the ends never justify the means. And One Piece has characters that deeply align with this philosophy. Akainu represents a strict and unforgiving justice that he labels absolute justice. And like it's right there in the name, do I even have to give supporting details? Don't worry, I will. Like, we know this guy's got no issue going to extreme measures to uphold his beliefs. And this aligns with the idea of moral absolutism, where Akainu sees his version of justice as universally correct. When he destroyed Robin's town, he doesn't bat an eye at killing citizens, a lot of which were probably innocent of the crimes of Ohara, but all he knew is that these people were criminals in the eyes of the world nobles. And for him, there's no such thing as too extreme as long as the person is a criminal. And Akainu was even willing to put his idea of justice to the test against Aokiji, and that's because of his belief in a justice that exists absolutely. Akainu was already appointed as the fleet admiral. He could have just ignored Aokiji, but instead, he gave Aokiji a chance to fight for his own version of justice. And also, he could have just killed Aokiji after defeating him, but since he wasn't a criminal, he let Aokiji live. Even if it's applied a little differently, his unwavering stance on justice reflects Kant's belief in objective moral laws. But still, it remains to be seen if Akainu's absolute justice will win the war of ethical views. If Friedrich Nietzsche was in One Piece, he looks like he'd be the villain of a filler arc where, like, the crew has to destroy an oil rig that's illegally sucking all the resources away from some poor country. But in our world, Nietzsche was simply a famous German philosopher. His argument that moral values aren't universal, but are instead shaped by cultural and historical contexts, and that what's considered right by one person might be deemed wrong by another, is a major theme in One Piece's arcs. And although Ahhh champions a very specific, absolute form of justice, even the institution that he represents, the Navy, supports an ecosystem of varying ideals of justice. The three admirals, up and through Marineford, each have their own unique types of justice they use to shape their interactions with the world. Ahhh, as we said, believes in absolute justice. Aokiji believes in lazy justice, meaning that justice is not worth pursuing and should only be enforced with little effort. Kizaru believes in unclear justice, which probably resonates the most with relativism because it's pretty ambiguous and constantly in flux. And while these versions of justice compete with one another, sometimes directly like I mentioned before, the long arc of the entirety of One Piece is bending towards the competition of these ideals not having a clean black and white ending either. Like, if one of these ideals is gonna stand supreme at the end of all this, I can't say. But we've seen each of these and even other pillars of justice show signs that they can waver, and that the decisions that these individuals have been led into because of their justice may not really interact with the world in the way that they want to. And these differing ideas of justice and morality don't just apply to individual characters. Like, the best articulation of morality and justice in One Piece actually comes from a villain, from Doflamingo.
場所こそ中立だ。正義は勝つって？そりゃそうだろう。勝者だけが正。
And we see this through the history of the diverse cultural norms across the arcs of One Piece. Our crew has traveled to so many different islands and interacted with dozens of unique cultures, each having their own unique moral standards. What they value changes, and what they consider right in one place might be considered wrong in another. For example, in Skypiea, dirt, or Verth as they call it, is sacred, which is obviously different from the blue sea below. It influences their entire culture and forms values that impact their sense of justice. And in Skypiea, the crew interacts with two cultures which both value Verth but have entirely different relationships with it. The history of Shandora shows their culture's deep beliefs surrounding the Master of the Sky, while the Skypians have their own culture of reverence to a god that's been developed over centuries. While both populations utilize violence as a means to an end, they vary in why it's used and when it's acceptable. And these differences are just between two groups of people on one island. In a world full of countless islands, these differences of morality and justice are universal across their world, from the large scale of different populations to the internal complexity within one character. Specifically, the main character, Luffy. Luffy has always had a somewhat ambiguous moral code. He often defies conventional laws in favor of what he believes is right. His actions catalyze revolutionary change. He has no issue breaking the rules for a greater good, or his perception of the greater good, at least. And while this can be seen as relativist, it also reflects absolutism. Luffy holds firm to certain universal principles, like protecting his friends and fighting oppression. His thought about situations can change, and he might be willing to change his actions to different ethical dilemmas based on the context. But at the end of the day, his actions are still based around who his friends are, and what they need, and not some larger sense of justice like the admirals have. Maybe you could label it like friendly justice, or something like that. But at the end of the day, he has a philosophy built around punching people who hurt folks who have given him food. And that's the main character of One Piece. Sure, he has a strong moral sense about him, but not a strict moral code. And to me, that's what One Piece is all about. One Piece definitely shows elements of both moral absolutism and moral relativism, but I think it leans more towards moral relativism. The series' portrayal of different perspectives and complex character motivations and varied cultural norms suggests that morality isn't black and white, but it depends on context and personal viewpoints. And even in that, it's gray. Some personal viewpoints in One Piece might align with absolutism, and by the end of the series, they might actually win. But in exploring these gray areas, One Piece does a great job at encouraging us to explore our own moral beliefs, and understand that justice and righteousness are often a lot more complex than they initially appear. And at the end of the day, Doflamingo is right, both about his world and ours. Whoever wins the war becomes justice. And I think that in One Piece, the war is going to be won by the guy that just wants to eat some meat and hang out with his friends. thanks for watching this far, Robot Kings. Here's to you. I don't really have anything funny or crazy to say to you, but I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. It's been crazy getting such positive feedback, and I think I kind of want to do some new fun stuff in the next few months with maybe some new video formats, or I'm thinking about starting a Discord or doing some live videos with some people that I know who want to do collabs, maybe around some anime and not anime stuff. So let me know what you're looking for. You know, if you join a Discord or if you'd watch some live videos. I'm going to do it one way or another, but I'd love to see any feedback for my Beat Bop Robot Kings who seem to watch to the end of the video. I love you guys. You are the ones who keep me waking up in the morning. So just wanted to say cheers to you for that, and cheers to our guy over here. Gonna take a little set. Don't worry, I checked his ID. He's of age. He's actually an eternal god. So yeah, here's a sneak peek of what you'll get when you subscribe to my Patreon. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about moral relativism and absolutism in One Piece. Beep boop, beep boop, boop, boop. Beep, beep, boop, boop. All right, sorry, I won't do that again. I love you. Sleep well tonight. Bye.